What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Daily Energy News Beat Stand-Up here on this gorgeous Monday, August 7th, 2023. As always, I'm your humble correspondent, Michael Tanner, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Dallas, Texas, joined by the executive producer of the show, the purveyor of the show, and the director and publisher of the world's greatest website, EnergyNewsBeat.com, Stuart Turley. My man, how you doing today?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. We're going to have a fantastic week.
We had a fantastic week. We had a great weekend. Not much really happened this week. We're in the midst of all these energy earnings, but Stu still, as always, finds a way to load up the menu. First up on the docket, text messages given to the FBI. Ooh, dun, dun, dun. Chinese wanted Biden family to name to help acquire U.S. energy assets. This is a little Stu edition in a word, quote, despicable. So Stu will dive into the latest Hunter Biden entanglement. You knew we couldn't pass one. We couldn't pass up an opportunity to take a shot at Hunter Biden. Next up, California and New York could miss their 2030 climate targets and still bankrupt the energy sector. Absolutely unbelievable. Stu, let's Stu will dive into what's going on in our two favorite states. Next up, Russian economy projected to grow despite Western sanctions. In the words of Stu, sanctions don't work. So he'll cover what's going on in the latest in the war in Ukraine. Next up, California High Court says country can't enforce oil well ban as state debates future of fossil fuels. We'll have to make sure we show the picture when we get to that segment, Stu. It's a pretty great image of an oil well just in the middle of a community space. But Stu, again, we'll look back on what's going on into quite possibly our favorite state and favorite government leadership there in California. He'll toss it over to me. I'll quickly cover what's going on in the oil and gas markets. Really what we've got today is oil prices back above 82. Last time we chatted, they were down at 79. So good to see them rise up. I'll kind of cover, Stu and I will break into what maybe that forecast looked like. Natural gas still hanging out $2.57. But we will then quickly cover some earnings, EOG, ConocoPhillips. So we've got two big dogs dropping. There's some other smaller ones out there, but I think it's important to cover what the big guys are doing is they're really setting those long-term trends. And then we'll riff on what you should be scared about for the week and let you get on out of here and start your week. But before all of that, guys, as always, the stories we're about to cover are courtesy the world's greatest website, www.energynewsbeat.com, the best place for all of your energy news. Stu does a great job of curating that website. Make sure it stays up to speed with all of your energy and oil and gas news. Dashboard energynewsbeat.com, the best place for all of your data and news combo. Hard at work at V2. Hit us up, questions at energynewsbeat.com. If you'd like to sponsor the show, email us, questions at energynewsbeat.com, or fill out the description below. We'd love to have you a part of the show. I mean, it's pretty incredible, some of the things we were doing. So again, questions at energynewsbeat.com. Look at the description below for everything you need to stay in contact with the show. All right, are we starting with Hunter Biden, Stu? Is that where we have to begin?
Gots to. This is so despicable. Okay, here we go. Text messages given to the FBI. Chinese wanted Biden family to help acquire U.S. energy assets. In a word, despicable. Now, this also was he was going to help get European and assets in the EU. So this is not just relegated to the U.S. This is a worldwide issue. I want to know how long the FBI sat on this. That to me.
Okay. Well, give me what happened here because I haven't read this. Give me an update. What they discovered? These text messages, I guess.
Oh, yes. And it was business dealings where there's also a tweet that I embedded in here from Fox News going through it in March of 2016. Walker emailed Hunter Biden and it said to Joe, you want to sign it? Do you want to go ahead and go through it and then go through the deals? Let's go through it. There will be a deal between one of the most prominent families from the U.S. and China, constructed by me. Hunter Biden's business partner, James Gilliar, texted future partner Tony Bobolowski on Christmas Eve 2015, shortly after Hunter Biden had been alerted to the CEFC, China Energy's overture and its wealthy leader, Yamalang Ying. I butchered that name. And
Good
so,
thing good thing we're not airing in China,
oh
according to the
no,
stats. So we're good.
remember a couple of years ago when the Chinese reached out to us because we knew all the things on those tanker embargoes and everything else. They were wanting to interview us. Okay,
now we can't get past the great filter. Long live the CCP.
You gotta love them. But anyway, we've got a PDF in here from Babalonsky. We have a dinner with a retracted PDF from that dinner. And then we have Hunter Biden's quotes in here. All this is not some random guy on Substack. By the summer of 2017, Hunter had met directly with Yi in Miami and sent a letter consummating plans to raise up $500 million to purchase assets in target countries. The EU, Europe, England. I mean, he's helping China rule the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear.
And this is, I put everything in this article that I could find everywhere else from Fox News and all the other sources. I used no random dude on Substack for your benefit.
Good. I'm because here's the deal. There's clearly some nefarious stuff going on with Hunter Biden. I don't want to weigh in on that. All I want to know is the Chinese only do things that are in China's best interest.
That is correct.
And they are one of the best countries in the world at looking at the second, third, fourth order effects and thinking long term. They were ahead on the minerals 15 years ago before anybody cared about it. They were first to energy security along with that minerals years before everyone saw that there was this energy crisis. Now, say what you want. Obviously, we're no fans of the CCP over here. Okay. I'm not getting ready to move to Beijing anytime soon. Don't give me, I'm not showing up to Foxconn in a couple weeks and going to go, but they do look out for themselves, which is something that we could do a better job of here. Clearly, there's some nefarious stuff going on here with Hunter. I mean, it's obvious.
Second order of magnitude. And I love the way you phrase that. The other article that goes with that we ran on this, Biden Energy Secretary called the Chinese official before U.S. tapped oil reserves. You and I have both covered the SPR magnitude of unbelievable. It is, I think 50% down, whatever the number, it's 40 to 60, somewhere in there. They've taken it down to the lowest volume in 40 years. They sold it and the average price was $25 out of the SPR. And Granholm called China National Energy Administration Chairman Zhang Huanda for a half an hour conversation on November 21, November schedules obtained by the watchdog group Americans for Public Trust. 2 days later, she announced more releases from the SPR. And then it came out that the only reason that they did the SPR releases was for the midterms. You gotta be kidding me. We are now, if China goes to war and goes into Taiwan, we're Scooby-Doo would be like, we have nothing in reserve for our military. And then they said last week, Michael, they said that they can't buy anything back in. 3 months ago, I said that they could not buy anything else because they have no money. They spent the profit. They spent the profit. They sold it. They had it in there at 25. They took the profits and they sold it from around $65 to $75, about $10 below market price to the
Chinese. No, it's criminal that the Chinese got our SPR. It's almost as criminal as what California and New York are doing, our two favorite states. What's this next one about?
Let's go to California and New York.
It's a hell of a transition.
Oh yeah, it is. It's a nice smooth one, and I love the way you did that. And we were done with that article for now. So California, I have no idea why this just happened. Let me get back to it. California and New York could miss their 2030 climates and still bankrupt the energy sector. This is really important from the standpoint that emissions and net zero are going to happen because of, Michael, natural gas.
Yep.
It's the only the EIA, my beloved government, has already said that. California and New York, two national leaders in the effort to curb global warming, could miss key 2030 climates, according to the state officials. It's a sign that even the states most aggressively pursuing the plans to reduce carbon emissions and ramp up clean energy development are struggling to meet tough demands. You know why?
Why?
It doesn't work. I'm serious. I have been pleading for folks, and Margaret and her husband George. I asked for folks to give me stats on wind farms and solar farms, and George has absolutely stepped up and gave me some really good numbers on the profitability of wind farms. And I'm going to go through it with him because we don't want to release anything without his permission. Michael, you've heard me say this. I've only found 8 years that the wind farm is profitable due to tax subsidies. This number in here, California officials increased that emissions reduction target, though not legally, to 48% last year. New York also mandates that 70% of its electricity come from renewable sources by that year, with California requiring 60%. Michael, Texas passed California. Energy per kilowatt hour in Texas is 1/2 of California. Do you know why?
Why?
We use all forms of energy in Texas. I am proud of Texas. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love me some Texas.
Oh, it's true. I mean, to think about, Texas has like 30% of its energy come from wind and solar.
It's because we use all forms of energy. And California imports 70% from Ecuador on the rainforest from China. There's some energy hypocrisy. There was another article that came up that Ecuador is finally fighting back. They're finally getting some bows and arrows to stand up to the CCP. So it's pretty interesting. Now, California is going to squeak, but anyway, I thought that
you read into this article, which is by the Sacramento Bee, and it seems to all come down to this debate between the cap and trade program. You have on one side, you have the economists who all stand beside saying, hey, this is the program that we need to embrace. We need to embrace one level of emissions, hand out permits accordingly, and allow the free market to trade them. You have the environmental justice crew talking about, well, that number's too high. Well, we don't need to we don't need to encourage pollution. We do encourage no pollution, and every policy that we create should be designed towards curbing pollution, not necessarily allowing this shift in pollution. They argue that the argument against cap and trade is that one, companies will learn how to game the system. That's true. When there's ever a market, people attempt to game the system. And two, the most vulnerable communities are going to end up still having the pollution because the more expensive and wealthy communities are going to be able to afford to buy and force, and companies with permits are going to continue to flock to those places where more permits are available. So I see the arguments there. The problem is what the Air Board is pointing out is that we're not going to be able to get there at the current technology rate. There has to be a huge increase in technology and a huge increase in the amount of permits being approved. That's the other thing that the environmental justice community is solely against: permitting reform, which is, I'm all for permitting reform. Let oil and gas go quicker. Let wind go quicker. I don't care, because when you have a competition and a free market, the best and most least expensive product wins. And as we always say, it's all about the lowest kilowatt per hour. Who cares where it comes from?
I don't care. And the least impact on the environment and the least impact on whales and eagles. I know that you throw up every time I say that, but the other part of this is I'm visiting with Larry Glover from the Glover Group, and he is talking about energy inequity and diversity. And you nailed it, that the poorer communities are getting it in the drive-through, and that wipes me out.
It's the one downside, even as someone who would prefer a cap and trade. How do you set rules that fairly monitor? It's like the SEC. People don't believe that the SEC fairly monitors the stock market. They try. They do a good job. Do they do a great job? No, they don't. So it'd be the same issue with cap and trade.
Well, the other thing is, when you sit back and take a look at where all this is going, the permitting reform you mentioned is critical. 8,000 renewable projects before 2020 were being held up by permitting. Now we're at 18,000 to 20,000 wind farms, solar farms from being connected to the grid. They're sitting there going, well, I guess we're going to kill a few whales and eagles until we get connected to the grid. I don't know. So
I'm down with the whales. Let's stay in California, Stu. It looks like they're doing something with oil well ban.
Yeah, it just Chevron. Let me get over to that story here. Chevron has been fighting this one, Michael, for 7 years. Chevron is pleased that this decision brings an end to 7 years of litigation and appeals, said Jeffrey Denser, a lawyer for representing Chevron, in a statement. In 2022, Central Coast Monterey County was the third largest oil producer in the state, producing 5.1 million barrels annually, according to the state's Department of Conservation. That's compared to 88 million produced in Kern County, which we know a lot of the folks over there in Kern County, Central Valley, and slightly behind Los Angeles County.
And so, to be clear, this was in response to passing ballot measure or initiative Z, which set to basically a voter-approved ban on new oil and gas wells, which basically, so now basically they've returned it back to the state and counties. It's the same thing that happened in Colorado. Boulder County sued for the ability to say, yay, we don't want oil and gas in our county. The state stepped in and said, no, like the Dikembe Mutombo. No.
But the important thing is no. That was almost like my mom. You will not stay out past midnight. So the rules that Colorado put in, you and I are very well aware, and those rules translated over into all forms of energy.
Yep.
So this could impact the other 17 states that follow. Anyway, I thought it was pretty interesting. Okay, let's go to Russia. I love me some Russia stories. Sanctions don't work. Want to give a shout out to Irina Slav. They don't work. Russia's economy projected to grow despite Western sanctions. Michael, who gets it hurt the most with sanctions?
The consumer.
The consumer, they get it in the drive-through. The International Monetary Fund has said it expects the Russian economy to grow by 1.5% this year, despite U.S.-led sanctions and campaign against the country, which President Biden once vowed would turn the ruble to rubble. He has no idea. In the article, it even talks about Iran. For example, Iranian oil sales in 2022 exceeded those of 2016 before the U.S. withdrew from the nuclear deal in 2018 and reimposed the sanctions on the country. Iran, we've talked about this. Iran figured out how to get around sanctions, and then Putin went, hey, not a bad idea. He notched that game up. And so the only reason that this GDP is at 1.5% is because he's selling everything he can to India and China about $55 a barrel. So he's selling it less than, and that's because what the market will bear in order for him to sell at rubles and won.
Petrodollar goes by, man.
He's taking a bit of a haircut on selling on the yuan. He wants to sell on the rubles.
Well, yeah, because they've got that peg to the gold, right? They've still got that peg to gold right now.
Yes, and it's going to go. China has bought more gold than the world combined in the last several years. And gold only goes up, I believe, 1 or 2% per year, is why it's a great standard that's coming back into fashion.
Nope.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Not everybody wants to pay for net zero. Michael, there is now people are going around the world saying they're protesting wind farms. They're protesting solar farms. And part of it is they're tired of the U.S. dumping their solar waste on them. Everyone likes nice sounding policies. Not everyone wants to pay for them. We're beginning to see that this holds true for the UK strategy to reach net zero as much for any other policy. Focal data survey shows, for example, 40% of the people say they would not accept any increase to my cost of living. Whoops. Same, roughly the same number of those that would not pay more to reduce crime or improve education. People are stretched. Around the world, people are stretched thin because of the energy increase around the world.
Yeah. I mean, again, it all comes down to the fact that Russia, they knew, they were able to set this up, and they were able to, they thought 2 moves ahead. We didn't. That's all it comes down to, because they had you running they had you pulling the strings.
Yep. Here. Yeah. The only thing that
it, folks.
Yeah. The only thing I got going for me is my really lousy Putin imitation. Hey. Cross between the Sopranos,
Chris Cuomo, and
Fonzie.
The Sopranos.
Hey, Fonzie and the Sopranos turns into Putin. Nice. Okay, so rock on. Here's where it gets really interesting in the UK. That survey also showed that 30% of the people in the UK think that the threat of climate change is over-exaggerated. Wow. There is a world awakening saying, hey, wait a minute, old thump face, what's his face that has a skin as tight as a drum and you could thump a quarter on it? Oh, Kerry. You go up and thump a quarter on Kerry and it'll bounce off like a drum. He is made more money by the climate fear. None of the climate fear has been accurate. Yep. So people are tired of it. Hey, yep. I'm all about the environment. Let's protect the environment. And they can't talk about it. So anyway, I'm pretty well done. I'm exhausted flying around the world, dude.
Yeah, no, we'll land back in the U.S., cover what's going on with oil prices, guys. We're up to 82.64 here as we record this mid-afternoon here on Sunday, August 6th. Markets expect to open up somewhere about 82, excuse me. So we'll see about a 20% pop. I mean, really, when all of the stuff we've been talking about, what we see as a supply shortage, what we see as global economies sort of slowing down a little bit to the point or speeding up to the point where demand has continued to roar back. We're now in what is sort of a fundamentals coming back to power a little bit. There's still that tug, what do I call it? The dichotomy between what we saw happen on Wednesday, where EIA came out and dropped a 17 million barrel draw, yet we saw prices fall through the ground from about 82 to 79. We've seen them rise back to 82 again off that supply demand sentiment. So I think as we look at what we see this week coming up, Stu, I see a shift back hopefully to fundamentals. And I think that's where in the next 3 to 6 months, I see oil prices as they continue to rise. It's a back to fundamentals, away from really that algorithmic trading that we've saw sort of really hamper prices right now. But again, I caveat that by saying, who knows where the sentiment lies, but I feel like the price action we've seen lately really, really points to a bringing back and a focus on fundamentals, where I think in the last 3 months, it's been much more of an extraneous, fundamentals haven't necessarily mattered as much.
Before you go on, Saudi and Russia with OPEC and OPEC Plus are really talking about in this next one, continuing reductions. How do you feel that's going to play in?
Yeah, I mean, MBS came out and said they'll keep cutting as long as they need, and that's going to keep supporting prices, which is only going to help oil and gas companies, specifically in the United States, as we move forward. I want to touch on 2 quick earnings before we go ahead and get out of here. The first one is EOG, probably one of the largest independent players out there. They had a pretty great quarter relative to their realized pricing being done about 440. Their realized pricing down 40%, still still earning $1.5 billion of adjusted net income. To give you guys an idea, in quarter 3 of 2022, where we saw oil prices around $100, $7.5 billion of total revenue. Quarter 2 2023, still $5.5 billion. It's only a $2 billion drop off about a 40% drop in oil prices. So that gives you guys an idea of the strength of that balance sheet right there. G&A costs drop a little bit to kind of give you some highlights here. $1 billion of straight free cash flow. Quarterly dividend was declared at about 82 cents. They did about a 300 million share repurchase program. All of their production was above their guidance midpoints. CapEx expenditures were all also below midpoint guidance. So production up, CapEx expenditures down. That's how you go ahead and maintain a nice adjusted earnings balance. I just like to look at EOG because they're probably one of the best managed companies out there. Extremely cutthroat, but they do a lot of things to support their balance sheet. 12% debt reduction that leads to about a 40% debt reduction year over year. Gotta love that. And I'm just trying to scroll through here and see what else is there. You're also seeing, to give you guys an idea, per well cost decreased, mainly Blue. And I always find this interesting. They mentioned well cost decrease primarily due to decreased workover and fuel related expenses. Well, obviously fuel related expenses with the price of oil and gas tumbling, you're going to save a little bit of money on diesel. And second, workovers. Interesting. What does that mean? Workovers are getting cheaper, or are they just not doing workovers? Interesting. Maybe they're in a mode of selling off. Well, I mean, what happens, Stu? There's for a workover, you either plug a well, add it to your plugging liability, you temporarily abandon it, you work it over to bring it back for production, or you sell it. And maybe they're in a process, and we do know that EOG is in a process of, and everybody is trimming the fat. So that's just a shift of the P&A liability to somebody else. Think about it. You have to, what?
Texaco has announced that they're going to go back in and do a lot more of increasing production in the Permian. And I'm not sure how that does with EOG, but
Texaco.
Huh?
Texaco.
Exxon.
Okay, I was about to say Texaco. 1996, Stu?
Yeah, well, hey, I'm a time traveler.
You were old then.
Oh, nice, my young millennial.
Just kidding. But so I think we say all that to say very interesting to see them specifically point out decreased workover costs. What that means, who knows? Again, I think the other company that's interesting to follow on earnings, ConocoPhillips, they deliver record lower 48 production, 1.8 million BOE per day. Woo, woo, woo. They go ahead and complete their equity acquisition in the Qatar's North Field LNG facility, signed a 20-year offtake agreement over there off the west coast of Mexico for about 2.2 million tons annually, subject to the Mexico Pacific reaching some sort of a final investment decision. 3.9 billion cash generated by operating activities, distributed about 2.7 to shareholders, including 1.4 billion through an ordinary dividend and also a variable cash dividend of 1.3 and some share repurchases. 7.1 billion cash on hand. I mean, again, primary oil, as ConocoPhillips probably being one of the strongest lower 48 onshore producers after that acquisition of Concho, continue to just trug along, and again, as you pointed out, Stu, what I get from this earnings report is really our value. The value that ConocoPhillips seeing is value within their own assets. You're seeing very little M&A action from them, and you're seeing exactly what they talk about. They specifically mentioned, again, they mentioned lower BOE pricing. 57.63 was their average during this period, 30% lower than the 82.70 they saw the first 6 months of 2022. But they did see production increase of 78 million BOE year over year. Again, that's not necessarily from acquisitions. That's from a combination of capital expenditures, both on new drilling, but also what you would call those rework opportunities. I think that's the theme as we sort of wind down oil and gas earnings, Stu. Really, the theme has been lower CapEx, increased production. How do you do that? Reworks, there's a lot of things in it, but companies the M&A has been a little bit dry up until this point, yet everybody's increasing production. Right. How? Well, they're spending money on themselves. And I think, it's one of the reasons Harold Hamm got back into specifically owning and taking Continental private. One, he loves that he wants to be able to go on Fox News and say whatever he wants. But number two, he wants to be able to drill, baby, drill. Baby, drill. So, love to see it.
Also has downstream. This also affected downstream. They missed their mark this earnings call as well too. So it's not just upstream. So, all right, Stu, that's all I have. What should people be scared about this week? I'm looking forward to getting Harold scheduled. I've also got several others that are out there that are being scheduled and getting released. We got some nice guests coming around the corner, dude.
You get Harold Hamm on the podcast, Stu, I'll be impressed.
I'm working on talking to a scheduler.
Talking to the people who talk to some other people.
Yeah, my people are talking to their people.
Well, let them know when my people need to get involved to close the deal. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you sticking with us. Have a great week, guys. We know it's Monday. You probably got a lot of meetings coming up. Stay strong. We know how you feel. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of life throughout the day. We appreciate you checking us out, guys. But we'll let you get out of here. Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.